You don't have to travel far. Just rewind time 300,000 years and you'll find a completely different world. No cities, no roads, no artificial lights or satellites, only glaciers, volcanoes, endless forests and winds that never stopped howling. This wasn't a human domain. It was nature's empire. Europe was locked beneath thick glaciers, Africa scorched under expansive deserts. The Siberian plains extended into frozen oceans, where woolly mammoths, ancient rhinos, and saber-toothed cats roamed like ghosts from another age. Humans, more accurately Homo sapiens, had only just appeared, small, without claws or fangs, and equipped with nothing more than a thinking brain and bare hands. We weren't apex predators, we were insignificant, yet somehow we endured. To truly understand how we survived those early, brutal beginnings, you first have to meet the creatures that ruled Earth before us, the ones time almost erased. Part 2. Pelorovis, the giant cattle of Africa. Today, the African savanna is home to antelope, zebras and buffalo. But 200,000 years ago, one creature towered over them all. Heavier than a ton and armed with massive curved horns, Pelorovis reigned supreme. It wasn't an ancestor of modern cattle. It was part of a different, older evolutionary path, built to withstand a harsher world. Standing nearly 2 meters tall and weighing twice as much as today's bulls, Pelorovis had horns stretching up to 2 meters wide, arcing outward like the battle horns of forgotten deities. Even lions kept their distance when it passed. Early, humans painted images of Pelorovis on Saharan rocks using charcoal and red clay, not to document, but to remember, to fear, to plead, because when we were still small, Pelorovis was the giant that loomed above. Part 3. Macrauchenia, the camel-elephant hybrid that defied nature. Imagine an animal that looks like nature's practical joke. The body of a camel, the neck of a giraffe, and a trunk-like snout resembling a baby elephant's. This was Macrauchenia, a strange beast that once ruled South America. Not a horse, not a camel, not an elephant. Macrauchenia belonged to an isolated evolutionary group known as Litopterns. These animals evolved in seclusion on a drifting continent for millions of years. Its unique nasal structure, located at the center of its face, may have helped detect danger, regulate heat, or even forage underwater. For decades, scientists were puzzled by its odd features. It wasn't until 2017 that paleontologists extracted ancient DNA from fossils in Patagonia and found its closest living relatives were horses. But no matter how peculiar or adapted it was, Macrauchenia couldn't survive Earth's most efficient predator, us. When Homo sapiens reached South America, its days were numbered. Part 4. Nothrotheriops, the giant ground sloth of North America. Before sloth became a symbol of laziness, it represented something far more majestic. Nothrotheriops, the giant ground sloth, stood over 2 meters tall and once roamed the arid lands, now known as Arizona and Nevada. It didn't hang from trees or nibble forest leaves. Instead, it walked the desert valleys, feeding on yucca, cactus, and even tough, spiny agave. This isn't speculation. Scientists found fossilized dung in Rampart Cave in the Grand Canyon, filled with undigested plant matter. Nothrotheriops wasn't a sluggish animal. It was a desert specialist. But the most surprising discovery wasn't what it ate, but when it lived. Some dung samples are just 11,000 years old, placing this giant in the same time frame as the earliest humans in the Americas. No asteroid, no volcanic eruption, just spears made of stone and coordinated hunting. That's all it took. Extinction doesn't always arrive with fire. It can come with a single wrong step, too slow to survive what follows. Part 5. Civatherium, the deer with divine horns. Before lions, buffalo, or elephants ruled the grasslands, there was Civatherium, a creature that didn't dominate with speed or ferocity, but with sheer presence. Standing over 3 meters tall and weighing more than a ton, Civatherium bore 2 sets of horns, one pair like a giraffe's, the other curled like a moose's crown. It resembled something carved into the walls of a temple, and in ancient India, it was. Known as the beast of Shiva, the god of destruction and rebirth, Civatherium roamed dry forests from North Africa to the Indian subcontinent, feeding on tree leaves, soft twigs, and coarse grass. Sacred, yet practical. Then it vanished. No dramatic confrontation, no grand finale, just silence. Today we have only temple carvings and perhaps a faint trace of its lineage in giraffes. We destroyed the god of the wild, and all that remains is a faint memory of reverence. Part 6. Gigantopithecus, the great ape of the deep forest. In the rainforests of ancient Southeast Asia lived a giant, twice the height of a human and weighing half a ton, moving silently beneath the forest canopy. Its name, Gigantopithecus. Though massive, it moved like a shadow, blending into the dense jungle. It was one of the largest apes to ever live, likely feeding on bamboo and fruit, avoiding confrontation rather than seeking it. For years, we knew Gigantopithecus only from jawbones and teeth found in caves, but its immense size and isolation couldn't protect it from the planet's most adaptable hunter, us. As forests shrank and humans expanded, the last of the great apes disappeared. Not in a battle, not from disease, just from the slow, relentless push of a new species rising to power. Gigantopithecus was the largest ape to ever walk the earth. We've never uncovered a complete skeleton, only fossilized teeth and jaw fragments, but those alone are enough to imagine a giant. It fed on bamboo, chewed through roots, and lived in quiet seclusion, like a monk sculpted from muscle and silence. There's no sign it was ever hunted, no sign it ever killed. Gigantopithecus wasn't a beast, it was the last gentle giant of its kind. But legends are rarely kind. People called it the Yeti, Bigfoot, casting fear onto it because few things unsettle us more than something massive and quiet. When the forests disappeared and Homo erectus began expanding, Gigantopithecus didn't resist. It simply receded into the shadows and vanished. An era ended, not with violence or blood, but with the quiet withdrawal of a being that never needed to dominate to survive. Vorombe Titan, the colossal bird that couldn't fly. Long before ostriches, long before people set foot on Madagascar, Vorombe was the island's icon. Standing over 3 meters tall and weighing nearly a ton, it was the heaviest bird to ever walk the planet. Flightless, clawless, fangless, it didn't need any of them. Its sheer size was its power. Its legs were like stone columns, its neck thick and its head small. Every footstep thundered across the plains. No predator dared test it, none were large enough. Vorombe didn't hunt. It thrived on fruits, leaves, and tough seeds, a gentle herbivore roaming the grasslands like a living monument. Then humans arrived. They weren't bigger, but they had fire, traps, and hunger. In just a few centuries, Vorombe was gone, not because it was feeble, but because it didn't recognize the danger. A new kind of predator had come, one that walked on 2 legs and hunted with wit and appetite, Homotherium, the saber-toothed cat of the entire world. When most people hear saber-tooth, they picture Smilodon, the solitary killer with long, dagger-like fangs. But Smilodon was a lone predator. Homotherium was a global hunter, clever, fast, and cooperative. Its teeth were shorter and thicker, meant not for stabbing but for a clean, fatal slice. One precise cut to the throat was enough. No brute strength, just surgical precision. This cat wasn't confined to one region. Its fossils have been uncovered across North America, Europe, Asia, even the deserts of Africa and the frozen plains of Alaska. But what truly set it apart? It hunted like wolves, not like cats. Some caves still hold traces of a legendary encounter. Homo erectus with stone axes and fire, facing Homo therium with saber teeth and teamwork. Who won? That's unclear. What we know is this: Homo therium disappeared, and Homo erectus kept writing history. Metridiochorus, the warthog with blade-like tusks. Don't let pig mislead you. This wasn't a barnyard animal, nor a typical wild boar. It was forged in Africa's harshest conditions, a survivor of deserts and burned grasslands. It wielded 2 pairs of tusks, curled like scimitars and rising like bone-carved warnings. And these weren't decorative. They were tools of defense and survival. In places like Olduvai Gorge, where Homo erectus once hunted, Metridiochorus was a target, but never an easy one. It stood over a meter tall, weighed nearly 250 kilung, and fought back fiercely when threatened. A single charge could break bone. A quick twist could tear open a hunter. It ate whatever it found: roots, dry grass, even carrion. Survival had no rules. And humans. They learned quickly not to take it lightly. Myolania, the armored turtle. Of Oceania, not a sea turtle, not a gentle pond dweller. This was a terrestrial fortress, over 2 meters long and weighing half a ton. It had horns behind its skull and a tail armored with bone spikes like a medieval weapon. Its head was protected by bony plates, its eyes shielded, and its neck short and thick, not retractable because it didn't need to be. The tail ended in a spiked club, ready to defend itself. Myolania didn't flee. It stood its ground on remote islands like Lord Howe and New Caledonia. For millions of years, it lived in peace, needing no defenses against predators. But then Homo sapiens arrived, bringing dogs, fire, and hunger. Myolania wasn't a fighter. It was the easiest. Catch, slow, flightless, and unfamiliar with danger. In just a few centuries, it vanished. Not because it lacked strength, but because it had never encountered an enemy that hunted with foresight. Megaloceros, the antlered giant of the Ice Age. Its antlers spanned 3.6 meters, branching out like ancient trees in the morning mist. Megaloceros. Giganteus wasn't just large, it was a living sculpture of its era. It stood 2.2 meters at the shoulder, weighed nearly half a ton, but didn't fight like a rhino or hunt like a cat. It grazed on grasses and leaves, its majesty speaking louder than any roar. On the walls of Lascaux and Chauvet, our ancestors painted it, not as prey, but as something sacred, crowned with luminous antlers. But admiration didn't save it. Megaloceros was hunted for food, hide, and status. Still, it wasn't only humans that sealed its fate. As the Ice Age ended, open plains gave way to dense forests. Its grand antlers, once symbols of strength, became unwieldy, too wide for the woods, too heavy for a world growing smaller. And as the final glaciers receded, the great antlered deer vanished into myth, leaving behind a deep silence, a gap. In the ancient imagination, aurochs, the primal cattle etched in stone, long before dairy cows, before oxen tilled the soil, even before villages and agriculture, there was the aurochs, Bos primigenius. A massive, dark presence, roaming the grasslands of ancient Europe. It stood nearly 2 meters tall and weighed over a ton, its horns long and dangerous, like warnings engraved in flesh. This beast was never domesticated. There were no enclosures, no ropes, only wildness and instinct. The aurochs was the pinnacle of wild cattle, the ancestor of every modern breed, but far more powerful, more aggressive, and untamed. In the cave art of Lascaux, it wasn't merely sketched, it was burned into the stone with charcoal and fear. Every curve was defiance, every position a challenge. Taking down an aurochs wasn't just about food and hide. It was a trial, a tale retold beside fire. Today we call it the ancestral cow, but to those early humans it was the ultimate test of survival, and not all survived it. The woolly rhinoceros. Monarch of the frozen winds, it didn't roar or chase its prey. Coelodonta antiquitatis, the woolly rhino, moved in silence, a colossal shape shaped by snow and time, gliding across icy plains like a frozen deity. Reaching up to 3 tons and stretching over 4 meters, its body was wrapped in 3 thick layers of fur, one layer even oily to repel moisture. Its broad, flat snout wasn't built for aggression, but for sweeping snow aside, uncovering buried roots beneath frost. It was perfectly adapted for the Ice Age, steady, resilient, and long-lasting. These creatures lived in herds, much like today's elephants, migrating great distances with the seasonal thaw. But what made the woolly rhino unforgettable was how humans perceived it. In the Chauvet caves, it was rendered in charcoal, not as prey but as spirit, hunched and still, as enduring as the mountains. Then they disappeared. Not from overhunting or violence, but because the ice withdrew and the grasslands never returned. Panthera leofossilis, the silent king before the lions of Africa, there was one larger, heavier and quieter. Panthera leofossilis. The first true lion, it roamed Europe over 600,000 years ago. It stood nearly 1.5 meters tall and stretched over 3.5 meters long, with a tail thicker than any modern descendant. But unlike today's lions, it didn't roar. It didn't live in prides. It didn't perform dominance. It hunted alone, quietly stalking baby mammoths, giant deer and wild cattle. One pounce, one bite. Done. Homo heidelbergensis walked the same lands. They may have fought it, feared it, even depicted it in charcoal on cave walls, a symbol of silent majesty. Eventually, Panthera leofossilis disappeared, but not in defeat. It simply withdrew, leaving the throne to its more vocal descendants. Elephas, Antiquus, giant of the green world, before the Asian elephants wandered India, before African elephants dominated the savannah, Europe had its own giant, Elephas antiquus. Towering nearly 4 meters and weighing up to 13 tons, it moved gently, through warm, humid forests stretching from Spain to the Caucasus. It wasn't a warrior, but a quiet presence in a thriving green realm. Around its remains, archaeologists didn't just find tools, they found reverence. Some skeletons were purposefully arranged. Ash and packed earth surrounded them. These weren't simply kill sites. They may have been places of respect, even burial. To Homo heidelbergensis, Elephas may have represented more than food. It was a forest deity, the living embodiment of a world far larger than ourselves. When it vanished, it wasn't just a species that was lost, but the memory of a time when humans still bowed to nature. Humans, the nameless ones, before nations, before language, before recorded history. There was us, not rulers, not mythic hunters, just fragile beings wandering beneath the shadows of now extinct giants and surviving alongside still dangerous predators. Homo sapiens, born of caution and sustained by memory. We weren't the fastest or the largest, not stronger than the Neanderthals, but we were different. We could imagine. We dreamed of other worlds, of lost ancestors, of fire-lit spirits. From those dreams, we painted cave walls, told stories, and gave names to things we'd never seen. At Jebel Irhoud in Morocco, the oldest known Homo sapien skulls were discovered. That early human left no empire, but they left something more powerful: awareness. They knew they were alive, something no other species had done before. We came last, but we remember the most. Now we live with satellites, artificial intelligence, and digital networks. But deep inside, something ancient remains. A wildness, unnamed, a dream of fire, an echo from the past. If your pulse quickens in deep woods or you're moved by the sight of an ancient cave painting, then you carry their memory, the nameless ones who once dreamed beneath the stars. Subscribe to this channel to explore the untold history of our kind, a story not written in books, but carved in blood and bone. Because if we don't tell it, no one will remember we were ever here.